G'day everyone, I'm Ladias, and it's been a while since I've spoken on my videos, so I hope I haven't just jump scared everyone, but it's really nice to speak with you all again. Recently, there was a little bit of drama revolving around Splatoon in Australia, New Zealand, and Southeast Asia, which I'll refer to as AU or OCE throughout the rest of the video. I've had some thoughts about the state of our scene, and these minor dramas have now made me want to bring up these thoughts, so I hope you'll allow me to indulge you with a rant. So, what's the deal with OCE Splatoon? I've been a dominant player in the Australian scene for over 7 years, and the problem with being at the top in this region is that once you get there, you feel you have nowhere else to go. Naturally, you want to keep trying to improve. However, to do that, you have to play with people around your skill level. Otherwise, you're just going to be playing against people less experienced than you, beating them up with Big Swig Roller and wrongly assuming it's a good weapon. This is the big issue. OCE is a small region, even with players coming from all throughout Southeast Asia and AUNZ. The number of players in the OCE scene is still so low. The difference in skill level between teams in Division 1 of Oceanic Series, which is the OCE version of Leagues Under the Ink, or LUTI, is extremely vast. And while you can definitely learn things from playing against different skill levels, there are more efficient ways to grow for both parties involved, which is why it's so difficult for OCE players to make a name for themselves in other regions as top players. Simply put, once players reach the top, they have no further avenue to improve. So, what are the main barriers to our progression? Australian players, as well as the rest of OCE, have 3 major problems: time zones, language barrier, and latency, or lag. Firstly, let's discuss time zones. If we look at playing with the Western scene, for example, time zones hinder our ability to play in their major tournaments, with them running mostly at 1 AM or 4 AM depending on where you live within Australia, and that's even worse if you're in New Zealand. The further you progress throughout a tournament, the more likely you are to play against teams which pose a challenge to you and are exposed to different strategies which your team can then adapt into their own play. They also serve as a great way to get your name out there and have other teams go out of their way to ask you for practice. This is not something OCE teams can experience in local tournaments, as most tournaments will feature the same couple of teams of varying skill levels. Finding scrims is also difficult for Australian players, as the period after school or work where people would be looking to play games, every Western player should be either asleep or heading to work themselves. Therefore, to find any practice at all, Australians have to go out of their way to play super early in the morning or just not get any practice at all. So why don't we just play with people in similar time zones? Well, there comes the issue with the language barrier. Australians happen to be in a very similar time zone as Japan, which is widely regarded as the strongest region by the West due to their large player base and dedication to the game. However, there are very few people in our region who speak Japanese, and if that wasn't enough, Japanese players aren't used to playing games with any form of latency, which makes them uncomfortable playing against those outside of their region. It's a popular meme within the Western scene to be called being refused from Japanese scrims being JP only for this reason. Now, it's perfectly reasonable for every player outside of the OCE region to be uncomfortable playing with us for the reasons we outlined above. We wouldn't expect European and American players to have to play at 1 AM for them to play with us, nor do we like having latency be a factor in our games. However, all of these factors against us make it near impossible for the top players in OCE to improve, as they cannot get meaningful practice they need, whereas every other region has at least a few other teams around their skill level that they can play against. It also doesn't help that these factors are used against OCE players when they do manage to find the time to play in Western events, with some people calling OCE players laggy or lucky to detract from their achievements. But despite all the challenges, players in OCE continue to try their hardest, with the Democratic Republic of Sao Tome and Principe, Storm in a Teacup, and What the Scallop making it to the finals of their respective division in LUTI, some teams playing sets at 4 AM to get there. Individuals such as Nex and Link have also become well-known and well-regarded players outside of the region, doing well in X battles or tournaments outside of the OCE bubble. Speaking of X battles, they changed how they work in Splatoon 3. Previously in Splatoon 2, X battles weren't as strict when it came to matching people of further distances and skill levels. However, this changed in Splatoon 3, which on paper, and practice in some cases, doesn't sound like a bad thing. Japanese players are matched almost instantly in Splatoon 3 with people of very similar X powers and fair weapon balancing. For Australians, it's not uncommon to wait for an hour to not even get a single X rank game. And if you do miraculously get one, you're matched with 2 E-liters and an aerospray, and not even of the Booyah Bomb variety! X rank was the saving grace for OCE players in Splatoon 2, as we got matched with Japanese players fairly often, which meant we had very minimal lag compared to if we were matched with European players, and lobbies which, while weren't perfect by any means, they still felt like meaningful practice. Numerous players, such as Ardino, grinded in X rank to get X powers around 2800 before connecting with the Oceanic community, going on to found teams like Greasy Goblins, which are the current Australian and New Zealand championship team. In Splatoon 3, it's very unlikely we'll ever get a player like Ardino again, and that's really sad. League in Splatoon 2 was also great practice for OCE, with players again being paired against Japanese and other OCE teams. League lobbies were great ways for OCE teams to get practice on the few maps that were in rotation, especially during Splat Zones rotations, which Japanese teams always took extremely seriously. Teams in League battles generally were paired against other teams of similar rank and power. Anarchy and Challenges were supposed to be the equivalent in Splatoon 3, but were botched by a complete disregard of any kind of matchmaking other than the extremely strict ping-based matchmaking in every other mode in Splatoon 3. Even in Anarchy Open, it takes 3 minutes on average for an Australian to find a game, with games ending within a minute due to X rank players being paired against people in B rank, which, as stated earlier, is no fun for anyone involved. What is even sadder is that it seems like OCE players were supposed to be paired with Japan, like we were in Splatoon 2. Before the game was released, Nintendo announced that X rank would be split into 2 divisions, Tentatek for NA and Europe, and Takaroka for Japan, Korea, Australia, and New Zealand, which people could choose between for a better experience. So why is it that despite picking Takaroka, OCE players must queue for what seems like forever into horribly unbalanced lobbies? It's not impossible for OCE players to improve, but with all these compounding factors, it is very difficult and been made even harder in Splatoon 3. There is somewhere to go, past making it to the top in OCE, but only if you make sacrifices to do it. You have to stay up constantly to play the game you love. To quite a few competitive players within OCE, this is the main thing that prevents them from pushing the game further, as they simply just don't have the luxury to do so. It is heartbreaking seeing people who love this game so much, only to be forced to quit out of factors outside of their control. Even if you can surpass all of that and make it to the top, there will always be people dismissive of you, saying that you didn't deserve it. To those outside of OCE, I hope I've enlightened you on the struggles we face in the OCE scene, but it's because of the people who do actively play with us that we made it as far as we have. Thank you to those people. Please remember you're loved and to keep being kind. For the OCE players, keep going. Your passion for the game and talents aren't lost on the people within our scene. Organizations in OCE, such as Frostbite, have plans to reinvigorate the scene, and with your participation, we can make it happen and get your name out there. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye!